BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. Touchdowns and three-pointers and hat tricks. BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Highly anticipated, evidently. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. The 2024 season has been put to bed, and thankfully, it is in the rearview mirror. We'll never forget it. They certainly made the 100th season memorable, but they ended the season, Carl, kind of the way they started. Unforced errors and mistakes, no productivity on offense for the most part, and dumb penalties. It was bad. It was bad the way it ended.
Yeah, I mean, it was just bad. It was almost like they felt they just wanted to get this game done and over with. Just the miscues, right? No production on offense, defensively, which we should really have a conversation about. It's back to the old stuff. Well, no, some things never changed with this defense. You need a guy open, hit a tight end. I'm not sure why that is the thing that constantly plague this defense. And this is not, Joe Schoen's defense isn't the only one that's done this, but people have schemed in front of the Giants so much this year in the pass game. It just doesn't make sense. And, the thing that bothers me, and, I've been critical of this defense for a while now. And I have no idea what's going to happen. And I like Joe Schoen as a person. I think he is a competent mind.
You mean Shane Bowen?
I keep saying that. Well, I like them both, right? But
okay.
Joe Schoen is a competent mind. But Shane Bowen, the one thing that stood out for me from the very beginning is that the defense didn't have a profile, right? It wasn't one of these deals where you say, this is what they do well, or they can hang their hat on this. And I say that in contrast to Wink Martindale. For whatever his flaws were with his defense, you knew what he was doing, right? But when you've struggled so much throughout the year to make adjustments. And folks, I'm not just saying this because the season's over with. I've been saying this for a while.
Yeah, this isn't something that you're holding back.
No.
Until the end of the season. This has been a theme all year.
Yeah. And it's just, it has to change. Among other things that have to change for this Giant team to get back to some level of respectability and get to a point to where the fans can just say, okay, this is an acceptable product. But we've seen players regress. Again, I'm not breaking news here, folks. I've been saying this, and this is not a shit on Shane Bowen session, but I'm just giving you where I think this defense has to evolve, whether there are changes within the staff or changes within philosophy. But you have to have a defense that has a profile. What do you do well? We know what you don't do well, and that's a lot. This is a defense that is, let me put this the right way. This is a defense where there are no scheme-enabled successes, if you will. So good players are going to play good when they have the opportunity. I have not seen this defense enable, scheme by scheme, players to be at their best. In again, we have these conversations, and the fans are having these conversations about players like Deontay Banks or Kayvon Thibodeau. Well, I know Deontay has regressed. I know Kayvon is not playing as well as I think he should, and I know he's not playing as bad as folks think he is. But you have some scheme limitations with a guy like him. So if he's just going to be doing the mundane things, he's going to play the run. He's going to try to pressure the passer. But number one, you can't stop the run, so you can't pressure the passer. He's dealt with injuries, but there's no scheme-enabled successes where, and I'm bringing up his predecessor because he found ways to get his best players in positions to be their best, right? Like a Bobby Okereke. Thibodeau had double-digit sacks last year. Deontay Banks was coming along. He was doing, by the end of the year, you thought you had, a real player there at the cornerback position, and it just everything took a step backwards. So, that's my 2 cents on this defense. It's it's just it needs to know what it is. It needs to be defined.
Yeah, I mean, and it needs to be gutted in a lot of ways too, Carl. There's just I know some of it has to do with injury, and a lot of it has to do with injury down the stretch. I mean, you think about the people that they were playing with, especially up front and on the back end, but certainly needs an upgrade in talent. That's for sure. Yesterday morning, as I was heading over to the facility, the news broke that the GM and the head coach would stay. It certainly feels like they got to get things turned around or they're going to be gone. The one thing he said it yesterday, and I was happy to hear, was that Joe Schoen said he was not going to make rash decisions for job preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Giants are going to have some salary cap space. But really how they got into the mess was Jerry Reese throwing Hail Marys all over the place in 2016 and spending a lot of money, which netted them a one and done in the postseason. But it was all a function of bad drafting.
Mm-hmm.
And last year they went out and they signed a bunch of free agents on the offensive line because of bad drafting at that position group. And, when I was talking to a couple of people who asked my opinion, I said, yesterday, I said, people within the decision-making process, I said, I don't know what you have to do, but you have to draft better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Newbin and Phillips, obviously Kayvon Thibodeau looks like, Malik Neighbors, he's going to be a fantastic player if he stays on track, right? He's just got the tools. And there's a lot to be excited about with Phillips and Newbin because right out of the gate, they were asked to play roles as rookies and they excelled. So I'm going to tip my cap to that, and hopefully those players continue to develop. But they're 0 for 4 with offensive line draft picks. Azudu, is he a guard? Is he an NFL guard? To me, that's this whole cross-training thing with this guy, and no one will ever understand why they did it. But just settle in. Like, the guy played guard in college. See if he's going to be part of your rotation at guard. Schmitz, is he going to get better? I don't know. He's got to get better. Or they have to at least look at it objectively and say, well, if we have to upgrade, we're going to upgrade. And then we know about Evan Neal. I mean, I think that's a foregone conclusion that he's never going to live up to his draft position. But they've got to figure out a way to draft. They have to figure. They brought Chris Snee in now. He was added to the personnel department. A different set of eyes. He's a Ring of Fame, Ring of Honor member for the Giants. He was a great player. Yeah, maybe we should just start drafting Boston College offensive linemen because it feels like those guys hit.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of them around the league. But they've got to figure out a way to get that offensive line fixed, and they need to get a legitimate player or two in and around Dexter Lawrence because you can't ask him to do everything.
No. You have guys that are, role players that probably, well, they weren't brought in to be full timers like Nacho. He's a you know a sugar rush guy. I mean, he's a guy that gives you some energy, some spark, but he wears down, right? Plays hard, but he wears down if you gotta put him in there all the time to stop the run. And because again, this defense failed to make adjustments for 6 straight weeks. They were giving up, 150, 200 yards rushing.
It made Bobby Okereke look average, and he is not
Yes,
an average player.
right. And so the fact that you couldn't figure out how to just plug in gaps to just deter the run, um, it tells me that it's just not, yes, you do need players in the NFL, but you also need schematics and you need someone with the vision to evaluate your best players and look at them and say, okay, this is how I have to use my scheme for these guys to have success. And it's pretty common conversation in circles that I'm in of players that have played at a high level that play for good coaching. And you hear Bart Scott talk about it a lot of, coaches that are married to a scheme and they just want you to run their scheme and they don't look at the personnel that they have, or if something goes wrong with the personnel, can you adjust your scheme to fit the next guy in? And there's a lot of that in the NFL. And I don't know if it's stubbornness or if it's people that have been in systems. And this is not on Shane Bowen, I'm talking league wide. um, but it feels to me like some of these, and I've had it during my career too, some of these guys are almost like substitute teachers who did not quite know how to adjust a lesson plan if somebody asked a question in the class, right? They just came in and this is what I'm teaching today. If somebody had a question, you're going to have to wait till the teacher gets back. Can't have that in today's NFL. And so you talked about injuries. Yes. There's another thing. The Giants have the second youngest defense, but that's not an excuse either. So injuries, yeah, they affect all teams, some more than others. But where it comes down to personnel, if you have injuries and the next man up is just not that good or doesn't play at that level, yeah, you need better talent because not everybody's a starter in the NFL. Either you need better talent, you need to prepare your guys better. And you look at obviously the class of the NFL, right, NFC right now, two teams, um, Philadelphia and Detroit. Now, Detroit's had a rash of injuries, right? They have not taken their foot off the pedal at all. Next man up, they come in there knowing what the expectation is. What is the expectation in New York? You see, they set a standard in Detroit where they're what to the wall, and next guy in doing the same thing, and they've lost some key players. Next man up in the Giants, you just come in and you do the same thing, which is not a whole lot in terms of high level play. So is it talent? Is it talent development? I look at someone like Dane Belton, plays with bad leverage on the football. I think he should be progressing more. I think he does have talent. looked really good in training camp. And then he just, blended into the woodwork as just a guy. And then they put him in there um, in the game Sunday and, played with poor leverage on the football, a lot of passes caught. I just, so they've got to be better at developing. They got to be better at scheme adjustments. And that's just on one side of the football. On the offensive side of the football, I believe that Brian Daboll can scheme some guys open. He's done it all year, right? But they haven't figured out, and I think Joe Schoen kind of alluded to it um, in his press conference. They haven't figured out how to get Jalen Hyatt going. And then you don't play the kid, and then the narrative is he's dumb or he don't know the playbook, which none of those things are true. But you get so stuck in the thing that you need to do, and your offense doesn't look productive. And I know when we've seen good quarterback play, whoever's name is on the back of the jersey, good quarterback play, you see guys open all over the place that are hit. But Jalen Hyatt is the kind of player that works in this NFL. If you want to know what I would compare him to, Brandon Cooks when he was with the Rams. Just a guy who can take the top off your defense. He's going to get a couple go balls every game, but he's going to stretch your safeties out. He's going to create some space for other guys. And if you don't want to honor him, he's going to catch the ball. You drafted him because of this. And I know Joe said in his presser, well, we got to get better quarterback play. Well, you know what? Even with bad quarterback play, you can't be so stuck in your ways that you don't throw a shot up there every once in a while. Hey, put him in there and let him take a shot, right? Scare the shit out of a defensive backfield and like, oh boy, this boy's got some speed. We better honor him because it only helps your run game. It takes people out of the box.
Well, listen, we got to get better quarterback play.
Yeah.
That was the theme. Let's just put the blame, everything on the quarterback this year. Daniel Jones, 6 years, was missing something. We got to get better quarterback play. Did you watch Tanner McKee of the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday? It's a guy who never threw a pass in the NFL. He was the third quarterback all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
He threw 4 passes the week before for the first time in his life. He made his first start without any of the Eagles starting offensive linemen, without Saquon Barkley. Goddard was coming off injured reserve, and so they wanted to get him involved to get ready for the playoffs. So they fed him the ball a little bit. But he was able to function. He was able to function without the starting offensive line. He was able to function without Saquon Barkley. Yeah, Gainwell played a bunch in the game. There's other teams that use backup quarterbacks that get some level of production out of them.
Yeah.
To lay this all on, well, we got to get better quarterback play. Like, I don't know. I'm watching NFL games. I'm watching guys coming off the bench. I'm watching backup quarterbacks play. I watched A. O'Connell for the Raiders do some pretty good things when he was coming off his injuries.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching backup quarterbacks come in and play and at least function sometimes. Hey, there's going to be the games where they play and they're terrible, and you're going to have those disasters. But you had 1 out of 17 games in which the backup quarterback played well.
Right.
So there's more to it than, well, we got to get better quarterback. Because the way you read that, the translation is we have bad quarterbacks. And, okay, you don't have Patrick Mahomes or Burrow. You don't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are backup quarterbacks that are functioning in the NFL, at least in doses.
Sure.
For all right, 1 week they look like the backup quarterback, and then the next week they play well.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they're backups for the most part, but we don't see enough of playing well or a guy who can come in and hold the rope until things can get fixed. Then listen,
make the quarterbacks better.
Make them better. It's easy to work with the gifted ones, right? But those who don't have the gifts that you have to get ready to play because your job depends on it, you got to do a better job of teaching them. Simple as that. Like, and Dave's is, I think the world of him. Like I said, I think he's a hell of a play caller. I think he gets guys open. But if there's a disconnect, he's got to find out, they've got to do their own evaluation. Because if there's a disconnect with how these guys are processing what you want, that you can look so elementary and just non-productive, just bogged down, then there's something that's getting lost in translation. Because yes, we can cut on a film and see guys running wide open, but yet the quarterback has not quite figured out how to get the ball to them. Why is that? Right now is the time to ask those questions. You're in the middle of a season, in the throes of it all, and you're dealing with the injuries and you're dealing with other personnel things and other sides of the football. But right now is the time. Now you got to do your self-evaluation, because you're about to bring somebody in here who has to be very good. He's got to run your offense. He's got to be more than competent. So now is the time to ask yourself, what can I do better? What can I be better at when it comes to this position? Because right now, and we know it's more than just quarterback, but if it's the most important position in the game, and we are seeing a lot of misses on film, meaning guys open, quarterback can't get them the ball. Now, they ain't all dumb. They get to this level with some level of competency. So now comes down to, what can you do better as a coach, Brian Daboll, as an offensive mind? What can you do better? Ask yourself that, because you've had 4 quarterbacks that just couldn't get it done. You get 1 performance out of the year, right? It all came together. It looks like this is what we were expecting your offense to look like against the Colts, right? That's 1 in a row, literally, because you went back and got stuck in the mud against Philadelphia. Situational football, all of these things quarterbacks have got to be good at, but what are you doing that or not doing that you can do better? That's the question, right? You're growing into the job, right? You got a coaching staff that everybody seems to be in sync. But what can you do better as the head coach, as the play caller? Now, it's a lot of responsibility. What can you challenge your staff to do better, right? Look at the personnel, look at the guys you're keeping. And then you go and you tell your defensive or offensive position coaches, I need to get more out of this group. And you got to evaluate how you're coaching them, because I'm not going to let you as assistant coaches get me fired because you can't get your players going. And you have to look in the mirror yourself, Dabes, and say, I'm not going to get myself fired because I can't get shit out of the quarterback position. You got to examine it. Now is the time.
Right. That's not an excuse. You can't.
This is it.
Can't keep throwing the quarterbacks under the bus, and it's bad quarterback play.
If it's bad quarterback play,
fix it.
What are you doing to fix it? That's the question, right? So here's the other part. And again, I will do whatever I can to help any of these coaches as long as they're in giant uniforms, right? So if they need advice, they need to ask me to look at, I will do that, with my whatever level of expertise I have, right? But the other part of this for Coach Daboll is, and this is 100% on you as a head coach, the undisciplined play that started the season, that ended the season. It's the same, not valuing possessions, unforced errors, no situational awareness from players that should have it, right?
You mean like a punt return in which you're starting in plus territory? You get
Yeah.
a 27-yard punt return or 32, whatever it was. Smith Marset had in the first snap as a false illegal shift.
Mm-hmm. Again, what have I been saying, Bob? Value possessions. This team doesn't value possessions. So that falls on you as head coach ultimately, but it also falls on every one of those assistants. If your assistant coaches are not emphasizing the importance of possessions by position, don't let it be you that jumps off sides. Don't let it be you who's not getting set before the snap. Okay, everybody has situational awareness. Everybody become a smart football team. We just got a big return. Now we're in position, one first down, we can kick a field goal at the minimum. These are the things that smart teams think about. It often and it ultimately comes down to the head coach and his messaging, but he's got to coach his coaches. These are all things that is the next phase for Brian Daboll. But the undisciplined nature of this team has to disappear. And yes, it's players have responsibility because they get millions of goddamn dollars to be good players, right? So they bear some responsibility. Ain't no hand holding, but there has to be a construct from the top. This is how we're going to operate. We're not tolerating red zone penalties. We're not tolerating sudden change plays where we have to set ourselves back. We're not going to tolerate that, right? We're not going to tolerate on a third and whatever, we got a chance to get the offense the ball back to win a game. And this I know for sure, and any player will tell you, on a third and short, and the team wants to keep the ball, the offense, they tell you on the sidelines, don't jump off sides. Your position coach tells you, don't jump off sides. The guy in the huddle tells you, don't jump off sides 3 times before the ball is even snapped. And what happens? You jump off sides. Unacceptable. But that's just the way this team has operated.
And it's almost fitting too, like when you think about the disaster of 2024 and the Hard Knocks episode. Remember when Shane Bowen's addressing the staff and they're talking about defensive front guys and a role that maybe Boogie Basham can fill? Carl, it's almost some bizarre, poetic, tragic, full circle that if you remember in Hard Knocks when Shane Bowen was addressing the staff about guys up front and the name Boogie Basham comes up. And is this a role that Boogie Basham, is this something we got a guy like Boogie Basham that could fill this role? He's the kind of guy that could be a fit for us. It's almost like some sick, bizarre, come full circle for this miserable season that on the last defensive series of the year, the guy that got talked about in Hard Knocks, Boogie Basham, does the one thing that everybody in America knew Philadelphia was doing except for one guy.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, this is, like you said, it's fitting. It's a complete full circle. You start the season with this and you end it with the same type of thing. And it's just not acceptable. And listen, here's the other part. As coaches, if you're going to stand on the table and bang the table for a player, you best know that that's your investment now. If you're saying, I'm going to stand on the table, this is my guy, that's your investment. You better make sure he makes you look good because you believed in him. But this is not happening. It has to change. And this is, this is the honest truth. Like I am a Brian Daboll fan. I think he's smart. I'm happy he's back. But these are the things that they have to confront.
Right. And staying the course is not the answer.
No.
Staying the course is
changing course. Yeah.
Changing course is the answer. A la
Yeah.
Parcells in 84.
Yeah. Now it's time to hold coaches accountable. First of all, hold self accountable. Second, hold coaches accountable. Coaches will hold players accountable, and there needs to be a construct. What is your North Star? What type of team are you? What type of team are you as a whole? What type of defense are you going to be? What type of offense will you be? And all of those move up towards that North Star. Everything points up. So whatever you are, if you're going to say you're this type of team, however your defense plays, they're going to play towards that mandate. It's going to be disciplined. It's going to be tough. It's going to be smart. Those sayings are all over everybody's building. Okay? Show us better than you can tell us. Right? Because you can wear T-shirts. You can do all these things. You can put signs all over the building. Every team has it. We're going to be smart. We're going to be tough. The Giants had dog was one of theirs, right? Show us better than you can tell us. That's what you should have in your freaking building. Show them better than you can tell them. Because right now, it's all of this, and there's nothing that you can hang your hat on the field. And look, this team had chances to win football games, right? So you can say, yeah, well, they were in a lot of games. There were some one-score games, and there were some empty calories in some of those one-score games, if I'm being honest. But there were, if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers game, is that not a game the Giants should have won, could have won? Had the ball going in.
Definitely could have won the game. The Cincinnati game could have won that game. Yeah. There's a bunch of them they could have won, but they didn't because of the same things.
Sure. So that has to change. What are you? What's your profile? Right? There's got to be a North Star, and everything you do goes towards that mantra. No more, get the walls clean. Show us better than you can tell us. Because right now there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of excitement, but I want to see your first round draft choice in Malik Neighbors continue to grow, right? I want him to be the face in terms of his competitiveness and his unwilling to accept losing. I want him to be the face of what the Giants culture should be. Jermaine Illuminor, John Runyon. I want those guys to be the examples, lead by example, right? You need to see players develop, right? Look, I think we're pretty clear. Evan Neal's not a tackle. And if he is, he's a swing tackle, and he's probably going to be a guard because he doesn't stay on his feet well. And we're so far into this process that we kind of know what he is and what he isn't. He can surprise us, but he's going to have to do it in competition with somebody else who's better than him in walking through the door. But my big thing right now is with this coaching staff, and it starts with Dave's. Look in the mirror, figure out what you can do better. Okay? There's no room for excuses. Figure out how you can coach your coaches to be better, to get more production out of this roster. and whoever else is on the roster. Yes, you need more talent, but you also need to develop talent, and you also need a personality. You need a profile for your defense. You need a profile for your team. What is that? Right? I don't want to hear smart, dependable, tough, right? Because smart don't jump off sides, smart don't devalue possessions, dependable don't drop passes, right? Dependable don't blow assignments on a regular basis, right?
Illegal
Smart,
shifts, all that
illegal
stuff.
shifts, yeah. Smart, tough, dependable. That ain't it, right? So smart, well, yeah, you got some tough guys out there. That's about it, right? But the smart and dependable part, it ain't there, right? So figure out what type of team you're going to be. Have that conversation with yourself and say, hey, how can I be better? Right? I've said I need better quarterback play, and yet I'm not getting it. And now I'm about to get one way or the other. You're going to have to get better quarterback play. I don't care whose name is on the back of the jersey, whether you draft them or bring them in. But they got to be able to execute what you want. And if they don't, it ain't always their fault. You got to say, what can I do better? Because that's what good coaches do. And I believe you're a good coach. So you're going to have to lean into that. And here's my last thought on all of this shit. Don't be a coddler. This new phase of coaching, where all these young coaches or new coaches think they've got to coddle this generation of players. They want to be coached. Don't coddle, even your best players, right? Let me just say this. If you got one of your best players and you want someone to mentor your best player, then you got to be willing to criticize that best player the same level that you criticize everybody else. That way, everybody gets held accountable at the same level. Favor ain't fair, but you got to be able to criticize so that this player, your best player or players, know that there's a level of accountability and they don't escape that because they are either a teacher's pet or a favorite or the best player. They want to be coached. Don't coddle these players. These new players, all they have to do is trust you. They will let you coach them. And so all these new kids coming in, there is a construct, right? You come into an environment, if your players love you, then they're going to work for you. And everything that came out of that locker room, yeah, we love Dave. He's our okay, well, prove it. And coaches got to prove it also. So take some self-evaluation. Not acceptable, a team that doesn't value possessions, a team that's not dependable, a team that cannot get production on a consistent basis on either side of the football. Not having talent is not an excuse, right? Not being good enough at times, you can say because we don't have talent. But from what we're seeing, the things that we are witnessing, some of it don't even require talent, right? Illegal shifts, offsides penalties, devaluing possession, making bad decisions, that don't even require talent. Some of this shit happens before the ball is even snapped. So it don't even take talent for that, right? The ball ain't snapped and you're offsides. Well, how much talent does it take to be on sides? Right?
Not a lot.
So these are the little things that have to be emphasized. No matter who you are in this system, there will be an expectation of this level of performance. And then the rest of it, your talent will take over. But right now, there is some self-reflection and self-evaluation. Obviously, he said none of them did a good job. But let's examine why and how you get to a point where this does not become a recurring theme. Because obviously, your job's on the line, general manager's job's on the line, and everybody that works under you, job's on the line. But more importantly, all we want is Giant football to return to some level of respectability and get on a track for sustained success. I believe that Brian Daboll is that guy or can be that guy. I believe that Joe Schoen is smart enough. He's got really bright people in that front office to get the right type of player in here. But they got to figure out who they are and lean into it.
Well, yeah, they got to draft better. Like I keep hearing about the 24 draft and can't go 0 for 2 on the other drafts though. Like they have this year, they have to draft better. They have to stop with the charade of forcing guys like Azudu being a tackle. Like, to your point, there are other teams that sustain injuries on their offensive line. And yes, it's hard. But we cannot continue the Jenga game of the minute Andrew Thomas gets hurt, the entire thing unravels. Right? Like when the Giants played the Eagles the first time, Jordan Mailata didn't play. He was a starting left tackle, and their left guard got hurt during the game. They didn't fall apart. The Giants need to construct their roster better. They need to draft better. So I want to just wrap it up with one thing here, because the minute this thing gets posted, there will be the unbelievably angry Giant fan that will now fill our timeline ad infinitum. So I'm not going to even respond to any of this. Look, we are not consulted on decisions. John Mara and Steve Tisch do not consult us. They made this decision. I really believe that if they would have lost the Colts game and gotten beaten badly by the Colts, we'd be having a different conversation right now. Yeah. I think if they went 0-9 at home, that would have been a difference maker here. I think it would have forced their hand. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but they don't ask us our opinions on what to do. They have decided that they're going to run this back with Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and whatever the coaching staff is going to look like. Look, John Mara was almost lukewarm in announcing that he was bringing him back when he was asked about, is the roster actually better now than it was 3 years ago? And he's like, I'm not sure. So whatever the case is, this is what they're deciding to do. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are absolutely losing their minds when this information broke. But pretty much everybody's on the clock. And the owners have basically said they're on the clock. We're not going to sit here and tell you that the sky is rosy and all this other stuff. They have 12 months to prove to their owners, to you, the fans, you, the season ticket holders, that they can adapt and adjust and change what they're doing and not just keep banging their head against the wall, staying the course. Yes, there is a method to staying the course. But as you've pointed out, there has to be a lot of introspection and
course correction.
Like, okay, you know what? We got to deviate a little bit here because what we're doing is not working clearly. And they're going to have 12 months to figure out a pathway to get it turned around. Plain and simple. I don't know if it's drafting a quarterback, if it's a bridge quarterback, if it's taking a quarterback in the mid rounds or something like that. Whatever they choose to do, they're going to do it. And they have 12 months to get it fixed. But for those fans out there that are going to just absolutely destroy us as Mara mouthpieces or whatever, trust me, we're not asked for our opinion in the decision-making process.
Nor do they give any input on this podcast. This is not a Giants podcast. This does not emanate through Giants media. This is Believe, and we speak for ourselves, right? yes, we're in the building. We have a lot of insight, but our opinions are our opinions. We don't get calls and say you can't say this or you can't say that. Um, because if it did, I wouldn't be working there because that's just not who I am. But all of that said, folks, I think I want the same thing you want. I think we both, Bob and I, want giant success. And it's okay if you're bitter right now. But you're angry at the wrong people if you're angry at us because we don't have any impact on the outcome of any of this stuff. Am I a giant cheerleader for their success? You goddamn right, because I was part of it. I was part of the success. So, yes, I'm going to be critical, just like you heard today, but I'm going to root for success. I'm looking forward. I don't expect any of you guys out there to be where I'm at right now in terms of the optimism, but that's all I got, right? Because I'm not staying in the angry state. I'm going to encourage this team to make the changes to bring success back to this organization and to you as fans. So some of you can sit in this place, and this is not a criticism of you. This is an acknowledgement. You can sit in this place and be angry and say, I ain't moving until they show me something better. Because I've seen a lot of people say, I'm getting ready for another bad season. You are entitled to that. I look at it differently, right? Because as I've said before, I've been part of culture change, right? I know what it looks like. I know what it takes. And I'm hoping that this coach, this staff, these players can be part of that. And I believe, and I've outlined some core players that I believe sincerely are the agents of change. But if you guys want to stay in the space you are, I'm acknowledging it and I respect that. I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
positive and I'm looking forward.
I'm a little bit different than you in the sense that I'm going to be eyes wide open. No matter what move they make in free agency, I'll be like, all right, let's try to analyze it, Carl. Let's see how this player fits. Where does this guy come from? What does he bring to the dance? Is it a smart move? Was it a good move? We'll see. And then when they draft, everybody will be all excited about the draft picks, and we'll take a look at the players that they draft, whether it's quarterback, whatever they do. But to me, it all comes down to training camp and the season and how do they play. And if the team looks better and more competitive and are back in the National Football League, because it feels something, it's for the last 2 years, it almost feels like when we call these games, we're not even in the same league. I mean, in a league in which points are scored by accident, we've watched 2 seasons in a row where the teams average less than 14 points per game. Like, it's bizarre. I'm going to just be wait and see. Like, let's see what the product looks like.
Yeah, show us better than you can tell us. I don't want to see the slogans. I don't. I mean, because smart, like I said, smart, tough, dependable. 2/3 of that was not apparent for 18 weeks, preseason and training camp. Because you start off the season and you just never got better.
Yeah, maybe they should go back to the Coughlin slogan. Talk is cheap. Remember that one?
Yeah.
That was a big Coughlin one in 2011.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap. It was like, forget about the slogans, forget about anything. Talk is cheap. Go out on the field and play.
Yep.
And execute. All right, you got anything else?
That's all I got.
All right, so make sure you like us. If you're listening to us, leave your comments on YouTube. I know there's going to be a zillion livid fans that can't believe that they're bringing these guys back. Again, ownership met with them. Ownership discussed it. Ownership felt this is the best course of action. I don't own the team. You don't own the team. The Mara family and the Tisch family own the team. This is the course of action they have decided to take for 2025. So you roll with it and you hope for the best, because that's what I am. I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah. That's all we got.
Thanks for watching throughout the course of the season. We'll be back periodically if there's news of any note to discuss. And, we'll give our thoughts and opinions throughout this process of evaluations or whatever. But, Carl, it's been a lot of fun. I want to
It has
thank
been.
all of our viewers and listeners for helping grow this podcast. We have moved up the charts on a lot of the different podcast metrics. And that can only happen because of you, the listeners and viewers. So we appreciate the support, and hopefully we have better, happier things to talk about down the road.
Indeed. Thank you, guys. We do appreciate you, and we appreciate the engagement as well.
How do we like to end it?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Believe in
in
Giants.